Hi, Nine. Hope you're having a good day so far. Today's video lesson, the fourth one in our series on romantic poetry, is focused on the poem "Oh Come to Me in Dreams, My Love" by the amazing Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. Okay, let's get started. So the objectives today are, again, quite straightforward. We're going to read a romantic poem. We're then going to do a little bit of background information in the poet's life and how that could, some details from that, how it's influenced the poetry, and then we're going to look at the poem and demonstrate our understanding by answering some questions. Okay, so not too complicated in terms of lesson structure today. Let's move forward. Right, so the background stuff first. Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. So who was she? Well, some of this is from Wikipedia, some of it is from my own research and knowledge from when I was at uni. So listen carefully. Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley was born in 1797. She was the second daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft and William Godwin. Her mother sadly died 10 days after her birth. As a result, she was brought up by her father. Now, this is the kind of the bit of the background that kind of helps make Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley into something of a bit of a kind of an amazing individual. Both Mary's parents were famous writers. They were political activists and they're philosophers. So they weren't just writing kind of stories and poems. The writing that they were doing was trying to really influence people in power and society as a whole. So they were trying to, through their writing, is kind of quite revolutionary in what they were trying to achieve. So both her mum and dad had this kind of revolutionary, we want to change the world and make it better kind of ideal. Now, Mary's mum was thought to be one of the very first feminists, and Mary Wollstonecraft has recently had a statue put up in London in her honour of her efforts to kind of help women achieve equality in society. Um, Mary felt, as in the daughter Mary, felt a huge burden on herself because the death of her mother happened as a consequence of her being born. So, in a way, she tried to get to know her mum by reading all her mum's work, her published stuff, her private stuff, to try and get a sense of what her mum was like. Now, her dad, uh, William Godwin, he was a revolutionary as well. He was kind of like an anarchist. And anarchists kind of believe in almost like having no control, having no kind of restraint, and it's kind of quite chaotic in some of their thinking. Um, and he had his way of thinking, but he also influenced lots of other people as well. And people would come and see Mary's dad to talk about philosophy and politics. And one of these people was a guy called Percy Shelley. Percy Shelley is one of England's greatest poets, and my puppy Percy is named after him. So uh, Percy Shelley and Mary Wollstonecraft, the daughter, they ran off together. Mary was only age 17. Percy was in his 20s. Percy had already was married, and they ran off together to Europe, and it's caused a massive scandal. There's lots of rumours that people are trying to follow them. I think Percy had debts and problems with money, and it was a real kind of chaotic tour around Europe as they tried to just kind of get away from people. They had lots of friends to support them, but it was still quite stressful. And things also were difficult, not just because of the money, but because they tragically they had a couple of deaths when Mary had children. So Mary got pregnant a couple of times, and the babies just didn't survive. Um, Sadly, it was very common in the 1800s uh, for babies not to live uh, particularly long. So Mary struggled with that numerous times during her married life. Um, During this kind of whirlwind part of their marriage, their relationship, that's when Mary wrote Frankenstein, and Percy really supported her in that endeavour. Now, sadly, in 1822, so they'd only been together, for the 8 years. sadly, Percy had a tragic accident when he was sailing. His boat, they were in Italy, and their boat was, sorry, Percy's boat was hit by a storm, and there was him and some of his friends on board, and it was sunk. And sadly, he drowned in the lake where he had been sailing. His body was washed up on shore a couple of days later, and Mary and her friends decided that the best thing they could do at that point was to kind of build a kind of funeral pyre, bonfire kind on the construction on the beach, and they burned his body, did an open air cremation of Percy Shelley. However, Mary is claimed to have removed his heart first, and secretly she kept it wrapped up in his manuscripts for the rest of her life. Now, whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but that is the legend that goes with Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley and her husband's Percy's death. So, what we're dealing with here is a young woman who's had a very kind of traumatic start to life, but's had an incredible education with her father kind of influencing her political thinking all the way through, and the books and the essays that her mum wrote having an influence as well. Then she meets a young man who is exciting and passionate and revolutionary as well. So there's a real revolutionary kind of side to Mary's life, and the love she had for Percy was really, really powerful and overwhelming. So this is the poem that we're looking at today, okay? And it was written after Percy Shelley's death, um, sometime in the 1820s. Oh, come to me in dreams, my love. I will not ask a dearer bliss. Come with the starry beams, my love, and press mine eyelids with thy kiss. 'Twas thus, as ancient fables tell, love visited a Grecian maid, till she disturbed the sacred spell, and woke to find her hopes betrayed. But gentle sleep shall veil my sight, and Psyche's lamp shall darkling be, and in the visions of the night thou dost renew thy vows to me. Then come to me in dreams, my love, I will not ask a dearer bliss. Come with the starry beams, my love, and press my eyelids with thy kiss. So, a short, sweet poem there from Mary, expressing her hopes that somehow Percy will return to her when she's asleep in her dreams. Now, in terms of this poem, it is really simple on one level, but there's a couple of little tricky bits that need to be just thought about before we move on. And first, I just wanted to kind of bring in this bit here. So I just put a box around this bit here because there's some references in here that are pretty tricky to understand. Now, I've done quite a bit of research on this poem, and this reference here, "Love visited a Grecian maid," there's nothing particularly clear that I'll be able to find on the internet about what that means. So it could be a very specific but very obscure Greek myth or Roman myth, or it could be quite a generic kind of idea that Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley is thinking about here. So that's tricky. But the idea is that there's this some kind of ancient legend where a Greek young woman, has somehow disturbed a sacred spell and lost all her love of hope, all her hope of love and happiness. The second part here, where it says Psyche's lamp, this is much easier in terms of research. It's still quite obscure, and I'm not expecting you to know it. But this is another Greek myth. This time, it's about the legend of Cupid and Psyche. Now, you might know Cupid is the god of love, and he's the Valentine, the kind of the little baby with the wings and the bow and arrow that we have on Valentine's Day. That's Cupid. Now, Cupid, like all gods, can arrive in on Earth in any particular form that they want to take. So, yes, he could be a winged baby, or he could be whatever he wants to be. Now, in the Psyche story, he has a bow and arrow. Now, the bit into the backstory to him and Psyche having a relationship is all to do with Venus. Now, Venus is jealous. Venus, sorry, is the goddess of love, and Cupid is her son. Now, Venus is jealous of Psyche, who's an ordinary woman, an ordinary human, but Psyche is so beautiful that people in her town, rather than worshipping Venus, have started offering kind of gifts to Psyche, almost as if they think she's better than Venus. And that really annoys the goddess Venus. So she asks her son Cupid to basically play a nasty trick on Psyche to punish her for being so attractive. So, what Cupid is meant to do is meant to turn up on Earth with his bow and arrow, and he's meant to fire an arrow, which is obviously meant to kind of trigger Psyche's love feelings, and she's meant to fall in love with something grotesque and hideous, and that's meant to be her punishment, because everyone's going to find that really funny if she falls in love with a frog or a skunk or whatever. However, the that when Cupid gets his arrow out of his quiver and he's about to fire it at her, he accidentally scratches his own skin with the point of the arrow, which means that he's been enchanted to fall in love with the first thing that he sees, which is Psyche. So he goes on this kind of really passionate kind of mission to be with Psyche. He's obviously going against his mum's wishes. He's under the influence of his own magic powers, and he knows it's wrong, so he has to try and do it all in a secretive manner. So he manages to kind of magic Psyche away from her hometown, and he puts her up in this lovely little kind of island getaway where no one else lives, and it means that he can just visit her on the island without anyone else seeing. But he's still really conscious that she might be terrified of him, so he kind of only visits her in the middle of the night, and he makes sure there's no lights around, so she never actually sees the man who visits her at night. And yes, she is scared to begin with, but she eventually starts to kind of fall in love with this mysterious presence that visits her, and they have a relationship. Now, Psyche's sisters are very jealous, a bit like Venus is very jealous. They're really jealous of their sister, who's the younger sister, having this amazing relationship. So they trick her or suggest to her that she should have a secret lantern in her bedroom, and the next time that this mysterious man arrives, she should light the lantern and see who it is. So she kind of agrees with her sisters, so she kind of arranges the situation. So when Cupid next arrives under the cover of darkness and it's pitch black, she waits for him to be asleep, and then she lights the candle and she sees who it is. And of course, it's Cupid, and he's absolutely gorgeous. So she falls in love with him. She's like shocked and she's totally in love with him and what she's seeing. That she accidentally spills some oil from the lamp onto sleeping Cupid. He wakes up, is kind of shocked at what's happened. He never wanted her to see him, and he kind of abandons her, and she's never happy again. So when in this poem Mary mentions Psyche's lamp, she's saying that she will not light the lamp. She will lie there in her bed asleep in the dark, and she doesn't want to light the lamp. She doesn't want to spoil the magical nighttime visit that she hopes um, that Percy will bring to her in her dreams. Okay, so I think that's the trickiest bit, that bit in yellow. I think the rest of it hopefully will be quite straightforward. So let's have a look at the questions now. I've lost my mouse pointer. There it is. So here we go. Question 1. So you can obviously pause this video after I've done a little bit of a coaching here. Write your answer, then press play, and go to question 2. So question 1: how does the first line show the emotional feelings from the narrator? So here we go. Look at the first line. "Oh, come to me in dreams, my love," and that first line has got Two things that I think are important in relation to this idea of emotional feelings. Okay, if you look at the words in that line, there isn't really any emotional words. Only the word love is kind of an emotional word. You might say, because they come to me, that kind of command, that could be emotional, but it's actually this little word here, oh, and that exclamation point there. So I think those are the things you should look at in your answer to question 1. What does that word oh kind of suggest about her emotional feelings? And what does the exclamation point suggest about the emotional feelings of the narrator? So that's what I think you should think about in terms of your answer to question 1. So pause the video here and press play when you've written your answer. Okay, question 2. Explain how the emotions are increased in the second line. So we're looking again at emotions, but we're now looking at the idea of how they get more intense or how they get bigger in the second line. So let's look at the second line. I will not ask a dearer bliss. So I said for question 1 that the use of the word oh and the exclamation point were the kind of the things I would look at. Well, it's different in question 2 because here we have got some words that I think are particularly emotional. So have a look at line 2 and decide, well, which words in line 2 are the ones that have that emotional kind of booster. Look at the words that you think are relevant and explain how they increase the emotion. Again, pause the video here while you write your answer to question 2. When you're ready, press play. Question 3. Why does the narrator want to be kissed on the eyelids? So, question is why, so we've got to work out the reason, and they're being kissed on the eyelids. And this is the line here that we're looking at. So what reasons are there that this narrator wants to be kissed on the eyelids? Think about kissing generally as a concept. Eyelids aren't the most obvious place to go for a kiss. So what is it about the narrator's eyelids that makes them particularly important in this setting? Think about it. If you're not sure, have a guess. Have a go at this question. Why eyelids? To kiss someone's eyelids, what do the eyes have to be? That might be a clue. Pause the video, think about your answer, write your answer down, and when you're ready, press play and move on. Okay, question 4. Why do you think the narrator refers to ancient myths about lost love? So I talked about this idea in the reading of the poem. So if you want to go back a few minutes, you can look at that bit again in the video. But it's this bit here, particularly the Psyche's lamp, and not lighting Psyche's lamp, and kind of being awake and so on. So why do you think ancient myths and this Grecian maid on here? What is Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley suggesting about her relationship if she is referencing these ancient, legendary, mythological love stories? Okay, have a think. Pause the video. You can go back and look at the reading again. And when you're ready, press play and move on. Question 5. Why does the narrator want to be asleep? I think hopefully this is quite a straightforward one. But she talks about here, gentle sleep shall veil my sight. Okay, so what is it about being asleep that means what is it about sleep that she wants? Why does she want to be asleep in this poem? Okay, pause. Are you ready? Press play and move on. 6. What is the narrator's dream, and what does it reveal about her feelings? So, what is the dream, and what does it show about her feelings? So, first of all, the dream is in this section here. Okay, and she calls dreams visions of the night. Okay, so it's somewhere in that part of stanza 3. What is her dream, and what does that tell you about how she feels? Pause the video and press play when you're ready to move on. 7. What is the effect of ending with a repetition of the first stanza? Now I know it's not a complete repetition, but pretty much it repeats from there all the way to the end. Okay, so that is pretty much, there we are. That is the amount of the first stanza that's repeated. Pretty much the whole thing. When a writer begins and ends with the same content, what they're trying to do is they're trying to start and finish in the same place, and that kind of creates what's called a cyclical narrative, which kind of goes round in a circle, starting and finishing in the same place. So what I want you to think about is, what is the effect of that? What is the meaning, the deeper meaning in this poem, or what is the consequence in this poem of starting and finishing in the same place? What does that suggest about Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley's feelings about her situation of being alone, without a husband, and missing him? Okay, now that he's died. So it's the sad point. Think about how the beginning and ending, how the ending just goes back to the beginning, how that might emphasize or add meaning to the situation that she's in. Okay, pause the video when you're ready. Sorry, pause the video now and then press play when you're ready to move on to the last question. And the last question. Broken rhyming couplets. How does the use of broken rhyming couplets symbolize the feelings of the narrator? So first of all, what is a broken rhyming couplet? Well, a rhyming couplet is when you have two lines that rhyme together like that. So the blue lines would rhyme, and then in a couplet, and then you might have two more lines that rhyme next to each other, and that's a couplet. Okay. Now here in this poem, we have a rhyme pattern all the way through. We've got love, and we've got love. But you'll notice here we've got bliss and kiss. And then in stanza 2, we've got tell and spell. And then we've got made and betrayed. And that goes all the way through. First and the third line of each stanza rhyme, and the second and the fourth lines rhyme. Of course, the last one rhymes in the same way as the first stanza. So that's what's called broken couplets. Rather than having the rhymes next to each other in pure couplets, this poem has the rhymes close but slightly separated. Now, what I'm asking you to do in this question is to think about, well, how do those broken rhyming couplets symbolize the feelings of the narrator? So what kind of meaning or what kind of idea do these broken rhyming couplets represent? Think about what's happened to Mary in her life. Think about what this poem's about. Why are broken rhyming couplets a useful way of adding an extra meaning to this poem? Right. That's the end of this lesson, guys. So you've got 8 questions to answer. I suggest if you found any of these questions tricky, you go back over them. Don't rush, take your time, and have a good think about them. Okay, I look forward to seeing your answers. If you do miss any out, don't worry, it's absolutely fine. Do as many as you can in the time that you've got available. Okay, guys, take care, and well, this is for Friday, isn't it? So have as good a weekend as you can manage. Make sure you get a bit of time off work. Don't spend it all weekend catching up. Do some things as fun as you can in the situation that you're in, and take care and look after yourselves and your families. Okay, guys, I'll speak to you again on Monday.